So, Living Temple Legends, we're going to be continuing our series this week on He Is, I Am. We've been at this series for most of the isolation period, and I think it's been quite helpful. If you want to look back over it, the sermons are on the website, they're also on our Facebook, and they're also on this YouTube channel. So, He Is, I Am. And what we're doing is trying to discover our identity based on our proximity to God. So, because He is, it has implications on who we are. And today, He is a relational being, and I am a relational being. Today, the He is, and I am are the same. He is a relational being, and I am a relational being. As human beings, we have been created in the image and likeness of God Himself, and God Himself has self-sufficient relationship in and of Himself. Sometimes we mistakenly think that God had to create humans because He was lonely or because He was, needy, or that He, felt like He had no purpose. No, God within His own essence, within the Trinity Himself, has complete full relationship. He's not needy for anyone else. He's complete. And that's what relationship can do. God being God, the name God implies wholeness, fullness. He's fine. And so for us to be made in God's image means we're also people who can find sustenance and fulfillment and wholeness in relationship. Okay, first in proximity to Him Himself, like between people and God, but then also person to person. Our relationships are vitally important, and because God is a relational being, we ought to be relational beings as well. I've been meditating on an interesting verse during this time. It's from Proverbs 18, it's just one verse. But it says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire and breaks out against all sound judgment. It's interesting because I came across it, obviously being in forced isolation for COVID, there's more time to read the Bible, but I found it, just interesting. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire and breaks out against all sound judgment. Basically, there's two types of isolation. There's isolation that is thrust upon you when some dude eats a bat and then a epidemic spreads around the world, or if you're so inclined, someone put up a 5G tower or whatever else your conspiracy theory is. But I essentially think, anyway, I won't get into that. But there's the forced isolation, or there is isolation by choice, as implicated here in Proverbs 18. It says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire and breaks out against all sound judgment. In other words, it's problematic for a Christian person to be disconnected from the body of Christ. Now, I'm not talking Sunday attendance. I'm not talking about, being in a life group or not, though those things are both very important. What I'm talking about today is intentional relationship, that you are in relationship with God's people, because as this proverb says, it's problematic to isolate yourself because you're seeking your own desire. In other words, there's no accountability. There's no challenge. Being by yourself has its bonuses because there's nobody to push back against your ideas. There's nobody to to point out any blind spots, or, to help sharpen you when you're a little blunt. If you're going to a restaurant or you're going to a food court and there's many restaurants and you're by yourself, it's easy to choose what you want. But if you're with other people, if you're in relationship, there's negotiation. It just makes it a little bit harder being in relationship, but it's very necessary. And it says that those that aren't break out against sound judgment. In other words, when you're a law unto yourself because you don't have accountability or relationship, you can do whatever you want. And history has proven that when people do whatever they want, whenever they want, it doesn't tend to end well. Now, I'm not talking about being an introvert or an extrovert or having more friends than less friends. None of that stuff. What I'm talking about is that if you're not in a relationship, if you're not doing life with people, if you're not intentionally sowing into relationship, you've got nobody to point out your blind spots. Blind spots are called blind spots because you can't see them and I can't see them. And so if you're not in relationship, you don't actually know when you're walking sometimes in a path towards destruction, or have habits that are, unhelpful, or parenting in a way that's going to ruin that kid. Relationships help point out blind spots. Relationships are there to encourage. If you isolate yourself, you've got no one to encourage, you've got no one to challenge, you've got no one to laugh with. You've got no one to be honest with. You've got nobody to hurt with. The key people in your life are going to be so instrumental in your personal discipleship. If God needed relationship in himself with the Trinity, then surely we do too. So what I want you to do to start today is to get a piece of paper and write down on this piece of paper the closest people to you in your world. Your closest people. You might have 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you're an extroverted person, just stop at 10. I mean the people that you are doing life with, the people you see most often, the people that speak into your life and that you speak into their life, your key people. So just pause me for a moment and write down your closest people. Okay, maximum 10. All right, now that you've got your list of people, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. If there was some way for you to be the average of those people on your list, would you be happy about that? If you had an average moral compass of the people on your list, if you had the average gifting, the average qualities, the average walk with God, the average marriage, the average parenting success or failure, would you be happy with that? Because the truth is, the people who are on your list are going to influence you and you're going to influence them. And you want to make sure that the people that you're in relationship with are the right people. On that list, is there somebody in your world that you're sowing into? You love them and your peers, but there is something that you've got to bring to the table, a bit of wisdom, a bit of experience, a bit more like longevity in your walk with God. Is there somebody on your list that you're looking out for, that you're sowing into? Conversely, is there somebody on that list that is sowing into you? Do you have someone in there who's a mentor type person, a father, a figure, or a mother, or a auntie in the faith, or somebody who's just been doing it a little bit longer than you? Is there give and take in your relational sphere? If not, there could be some areas of weakness in your friendship group. And today, what we're going to talk about is relationship. And some of it you might think, oh, that's a bit harsh, Dave. Well, that's the bonus of being on the external, on the online. You can't throw anything at me. And if you get mad at me, maybe I might be right today. And you might think that's a bit pretentious. But just wait till the end of the sermon to see if you think I'm pretentious in this or not. Or maybe have a bit of insight into relationships. Because the truth is, and this is not to sound braggy or whatever, but I am blessed to be in relationship with some really amazing people. My list of my closest people are an amazing group of people, and I'm relationally rich. I might not be as financially as rich as others or as physically rich as others, but when it comes to relationship, I'm content. And there's a few principles that I've put in place to get to that place. Now, is it perfect? No. And will it be perfect for you by the end of this sermon? No. But it's definitely something that we should be working towards as people, because if he is in perfect relationship, then I also need to be as a relational being. So I just got a couple of points, then I've got a couple of tips. So the first point, your relationship or lack thereof represent your effort and selflessness. You have as many friends as you choose to have. Sorry if that hurts, but it's true. All the relationships bar one that I have in my life, I've pursued. I've chased after. I've been the person, I've looked at people and gone, I think that person would be a good friend for me. That person would be a good spouse for me. That person would be a good mentor. And I've initiated those relationships, all but one. The only setup I ever had was back when I was a youth pastor. A new couple came to the church, Carl and Rach, and we're great mates. And Wes, our pastor, had set up like a lunch date with us, but I didn't know who this guy was. And anyway, a random guy came up and said, would you like to do lunch with us today? And I'm like, oh, sorry, mate, I'm waiting for a guy called Carl. And he just cracked up because he was Carl. And we grew into, we're best mates, it's great. But that's the only setup. The rest, I've looked at people and gone, you know what? I'm going to sow into that person because I want that person in my world. Your relationship or lack thereof, it represents your effort or lack thereof. Because the truth about relationships is that people want to be in relationship with those that are invested in them, that those who take time to sow into them, those that build a foundation, those that take time to get to know and to sow and to really develop a proper bond. Now, you might not like the idea that your effort correlates to your friendship circle, but I believe this to be anecdotally true, and I reckon if you look at your piece of paper, you're going to find it to be true too. If you've got nobody or one person written down on your piece of paper, you need to ask yourself, how many people have I sown into? Am I going into relationships expecting to take, or am I going into relationships expecting to give? What kind of effort am I making to be a friend, to show love, to, proactively be a great person to somebody else? If you're not putting in effort in your relationships with other people, then obviously they're not going to develop into something meaningful. Conversely, if you look at your list now and think about your last couple of years, and there's great people on your list, you're probably going to look at your list going, you know what? I made an effort with that person, and it was a joy because I love them, but I do put in effort. And when they're upset, I'm there for them. And when they're going well, I'm celebrating with them. When they have a baby, I drop over presents and I pray for them because I love them. That's what I'm talking about. Relationships take effort. And so our list correlates directly with our selflessness, number one. Number two, lack of relationship will result in lack of growth. If you don't have people on your list, it's likely you're not growing at the rate that you could be growing at. And when I say growing, I don't mean like achieving like a set of arbitrary goals. I mean in the things that matter, in the things of character, in the things of love, in the things of, community. The truth about relationships is that they're hard sometimes, and it's easier to be alone. Sometimes it is. It's easier not to have to collaborate on ideas. It's easier just to make decisions yourself. It's easier to live by yourself so no one messes up, your space. It's easier to do what you want to do, but just because it's easier doesn't mean it's better. Relationships result in growth. People who challenge you care about you. People who will spot areas where you need to change care about you. And if you don't have people in your world close enough to be able to do that, then there's something wrong. My point, number three, if you want to grow and if you want to see your effort result in a tight friendship circle, you need to go into relationships with this one tip. I think this is all it takes. In relationships, you come to give and not take. Right? You might think, well, yeah, but all relationships are give and take. Yeah, true. But you are only responsible for the giving part and the outgiving part. There's nothing that will destroy a relationship faster than one person being the giver and one person being the taker always. And this isn't just for spouses. This is all the time. There are so many one-sided friendships where one person is always the one bringing the drain to the relationship. There's one person who comes to give and one that comes to take. And if you're a draining type of a person and you're never coming to the relationship to give, the relationship's not going to last for two reasons. One, the other person is going to feel like you're a project, that you're not a friend, that you're someone who drains them, not a peer, somebody who they have to work to be around. Right? I know that sounds harsh, but some people drain. That's the one side of things. But for the other person, it's not good either, because they're always receiving. They're not learning how to give. We all have to learn to outgive one another if we want our relationships to work. One of my best mates is Andrew Grant, and one reason we've become close is that our relationship is built, I think, on a foundation of giving. Like when I give to him, whether it be in ministry or friendship or whatever, he's reciprocating by, doing as much or if not more. When I'm challenging him on being a good dad, he's challenging me more. When I'm talking about my wife and what I can do better, he's doing the same to me. He's out giving me in the things that matter, in challenge, in encouragement. He's hilarious. He's fun to be around. Like, being in relationship is good because I think it's mutually beneficial, and I think he'd feel the same way. Right? But sometimes there's just these ingrained negative connotations to relationship that you might not even know you're doing, but it's destroying the other person and sucking the life out of them. If you end a conversation or an encounter with a friend with a line like, we should do this more often. We don't do this enough, right? Yeah, there's a wholesome desire behind that because you like hanging out with the person, but also for the person, it feels like a guilt or an obligation when somebody says that. That's not coming to give. I thought you'd forgotten about me. Those little backhanded, passive-aggressive comments, they're just not helpful for relationships. If you want to get deep in relationship with a friend, in community, you come to give. The easy way to make my naughty list is in the church is to say something like, the church doesn't meet my needs, or this relationship isn't meeting my needs, or, that person's not, see ya, because it's not about your needs. That's the thing about relationships, it's about giving. The Bible calls us to be like Christ, who says there is no greater love than this, than to lay down your life for your friends. Growing in relationship is about giving. Growing in relationship is about overflowing in your relationship and sowing into somebody else, not waiting for somebody else to notice you, but going and having a chat. Now, I said at the start, this isn't about introvert or extrovert, and I absolutely appreciate, as being someone married to an introvert, how hard it is sometimes to go and strike up conversation. But yes, it's hard. But it's harder being alone. Right? We can't get into the micro skills of that now, but you only need one or two people on your list to have a full life with deep relationships, long-term relationships, not a bunch of acquaintances, the people that matter. The last point I want to make is that everybody has a friend. You just may not have found them yet. Back in my day, when we used to have to try to find ourselves a wife, or the girls were finding a husband, we were looking for partners, we didn't have Christian Mingle or eHarmony or any of the things you guys have now, your lucky things. We had to go and talk. We had to go and pursue. We had to go church hopping and find which ones, the big Penty churches, they're the ones where there was the most young, attractive people to go and meet, and then you just go and pull them into some theologically sound. No, I'm only playing. I love my Pentecostal brothers. But everybody has a friend. You just might not have found them yet. I want to tell you something. And Andy hates it when I tell this story. Hates it. But when I first met Andy, I can still remember it. I was at a party at his parents' place before it got developed down at 5th Avenue. We're on the back veranda, and I met this guy who was like dominating the party atmosphere. He was the funny guy. At that time, Andy had like long blonde, hair from surfing. The red somehow turned blonde that he surfed so much. He was clearly the center of attention in this party, the fun guy, the smart guy, the man's man. And I was like, that's a guy I'm going to be friends with. Except I was intimidated by him. He does hate me telling this story, so make sure you bring it up with him. I was intimidated by him because that sort of person's hard to befriend, because you're like, oh, why would they want to be mates with me? Anyway, I pursued a bromance with Andy. Bromance, a brotherly romance. I first, asked him if he wanted to go for a surf. At that time I was surfing. Horribly, but still surfing. And wanted to, I asked him to, meet Jess, and we started hanging out, and we got coffee together, and we forged a friendship together. To a point over the last 15 years where our relationship as brothers is so deep that there's no conversation that's off the table. because we've both outgiven each other for 15 years. We've grown to a place of vulnerability and bravery in conversation that we've forged each other. And now we're in the next scene where we're sowing into each other's children. And I know when Josiah, he's 11, and in a couple of years, if he wants to bring something up, doesn't want to talk to me about it, Andy's the first guy I'm going to call. You know, he's got genuine interest in my kids. And when my kids come over, he goes to the show and tell. You know, when a loved one comes over and the kids just show him all their new toys, whatever else, he loves the show and tell, and he loves sewing into my children, and he challenges me to be a better husband and a better father, and he challenges me in my faith, and he understands me, he resonates with me on a ministry level, and he helps me, and he doesn't judge me. That didn't happen overnight. It came after 15 years of pursuing proper relationship, and now my life would be way less complete without men like him in it. We got to a place in our friendship where a couple of years ago we were going on holidays together, right? And then I felt like I really wanted to go on holidays by myself. Now, if you think about someone you love, that's a hard topic to bring up because you can risk offending and all the other things. Anyway, I said, look, Andy, man, it's been great going on holidays together, but we're going to go by ourselves next time. And without one piece of malice, he's like, man, of course, go, be blessed. Like, you could tell that he wasn't saying it but not meaning it. You know, like the real conversations are on the table. Look, like me going on holidays without him and his family is no representation of my love and commitment to him or his family. It's just something I needed. And that's how friendship can evolve. You can be in a place with friends where you can be open and honest and vulnerable, and the relationship is forged because of that. Now think about our culture, this thin, materialistic, hedonistic culture. What more do we need than people in our world where we can chat deeply, where we can sow into, where we can, develop proper friendships that are lasting and meaningful? It actually is up to us. My first point was that if you don't have a good list of people on your piece of paper, it's actually a representation of your lack of effort. You're missing out on growing deeper. You're missing out on the challenge of being able to give to somebody else. You're missing out on the fullness of life. Do you know one reason why our church has fared very well through the COVID time is that our people are largely discipled well, mature men and women of God who have something real going on with God and then have something real going on with their peer group. That's what matters, right? It is up to us. The relationships in my life, other than Carl and Rach, are relationships I've intentionally gone after, and I'm rich and I'm full in relationship. I've got a men's group that meet, and we talk about marriage and life and politics and theology, and we pray for each other and we challenge each other. And you might think, well, I'd like to get in on that, Dave. Well, get your own group, right? Because I initiated this group with men I love, and we get together and we catch up and we challenge each other. It takes effort, and everyone brings something to the table. And you think, well, why can't I get in on something like that? You can. Start it. Start meeting with a brother or sister in Christ. You're as close to God as you choose to be, and you're as close to people as you choose to be. Now, this isn't a rebuke, but it needs to be a correction around consumer relationships. So many relationships are built on what we can take. And it's rampant. You get on social media and someone posts something like, overwhelmed, just waiting for everyone else to come to their rescue. That's not what relationship is about. It's about sowing into it. So in ending, I want you to look at that list of people that I got you to write about at the start. And just take some time to thank the Lord for the people on that list. Right? It might be 1, it might be 10. Thank the Lord for them. Sow into those people. Be generous with your relationship. Be generous with your time. Sow. Don't go to take, go to give. Thank God for them. But if your list is looking quite sparse, I would say take responsibility now to start being a given, generous, awesome friend. And as you give, people will want to hang out with you. People will want to be around you, and your relationships will grow deeper. So yeah, God is a relational being. I am a relational being. God bless. Have a fantastic week.